These thoughts up in my head, things I never did. I took some L's, but I'm still here. I got these thoughts up in my head. I toss and turn about some things I never said. I got regrets about some things I never did. I took some risks and took some L's, but I'm still here. And I know.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Overthinking Thoughts Pod. I'm your host, Ed, and as always, journey with me as we pursue greatness in a world full of chaos. Another week, another blessing, another opportunity to go out there and be great. So I hope your week's going well. I know I'm a couple days late, but happy Valentine's Day to all of you. And even those who don't necessarily celebrate it because they feel like they don't have a significant other, you are still significant. So remember that. So happy late Valentine's Day to everyone. And I hope that your week has been going well, filled with love, filled with blessings, filled with opportunity. So yeah. So we are back with episode 23, the Jordan episode. This episode is going to be called Growing Pains. And I'm sure we have all experienced that in some way, shape, or form. Growing with this podcast, there have been weeks where things have worked out well, and then weeks where I haven't been able to be as consistent as I wanted to. And that's part of the process. You know, I'm looking at other podcasts and I'm saying to myself, I want to be able to do this, but I have to remember that I have to go at my pace and just try to continue to stay consistent and build with everything. And that's pretty much all we got right now. So we take it one day at a time. And just the growth of people starting to learn about it and social media and all that good stuff, that's been helpful. So thank you to all of you who have watched YouTube, been on TikTok, been on Instagram, shared a comment or anything. I really appreciate y'all. Shout out to new followers over on TikTok, new people that are listening. If this is your first time here, thank you so much. I hope that you stick around. If you want to know more, you know, as always, we stream on Spotify, we stream on Anchor, we're on Google Podcasts, we're on Apple Podcasts. We post the videos on YouTube. If you want to hit us up on the socials, you can find us on Instagram at Overthinking Thoughts Pod. And then we're also on TikTok at Overthinking Thoughts Pod as well. Feel free to like, comment, follow, share it with your people. Any way you get the word out is great. So thank you for that. Let me straighten my shirt out. Shout out to my brother IV for the Urban Royalty gear. That'll be coming soon. So stay tuned for that as well. Also, just thankful for opportunities, man. Like, I think the small victory that I discovered this week was I just stepped back and I had to thank God just for being in his presence of like the small things that we take for granted and being able to have the opportunity to realize, like, when you step back and actually look at how blessed you are, like the smallest things and just getting in your car going from point A to point B and being able to come back home and rest, like that stuff that we take for granted, that a lot of people, you know, there's been situations where stuff has happened where they don't make it back. And you know, and the opportunity, or should I say the blessing of being able to just have those moments, that's a big thing. So I just took the time to kind of step back and really just kind of take that all in. And it got a little emotional, but you know, the way that the world's been going these days, it's a lot can happen. So just to be able to recognize being in God's presence and seeing what he does on a daily basis is nothing short of amazing. So thank you, God, for sure. But now we jump into the episode of Growing Pains. And I feel like I had to talk about it because I was thinking about it and I kept like renaming the episode in my head and kept trying to figure out how I wanted to go about it. And as I like sat down and just figured it out, it felt like Growing Pains was appropriate because, you know, with this platform trying to build, there's definitely been some, but then there's also growing pains in careers, relationships, life in general. a lot of stuff just happens, and people say, "Hey, man, we just got to go through it, or we got to grow through it," right? Like, and that was something I felt like as I was putting this together. I said, "Man, this message might be more for me than anybody else, but hopefully, you get something out of it." So when we talk about growing pains, right? Um, Nobody likes pain. Let's just put it that way. I remember when I was coaching and being in practice, and we were doing this drill, and I'm working with the kids, and I just remember rolling my ankle, and it was one of the worst feelings I've ever had. Like, that pain shot all the way up my leg. I thought it was broken. Um, thank God it wasn't. But just that pain, and it was uncomfortable, and then I'm limping for a couple days, and I'm like, man, I'm not how I used to be. Like, it is not cool. But there's also, as you go through your journey in life, there's going to be some things you experience. Now, pain can be experienced at so many different levels. People lose jobs, they lose income, they didn't get the raise, they didn't get the promotion, they lost a relationship that didn't work out, loss of a loved one, relative, what may have you. Maybe other things happen that trigger different emotions when it comes to pain. The one thing that pain does do, it definitely produces adversity. And sometimes when adversity hits, that's the moment when the dreams die and the progress halts. And what we don't want to do is allow adversity to derail us from where we're headed. Um, but there are times where that becomes extremely uncomfortable, to the point where we start to go back to old habits of when we did face pain, what were we dealing with, right? And how did we overcome that? So, what do you do when the pain is uncomfortable? How do you overcome that when it happens? Um, Pain can do one or two things to you. The way I see it, it can either bury you or it can build you. And you have to decide on what you're going to choose. When you look at certain aspects in life, a lot of people give up when the pain hits, because they feel at that moment, at that time, that's all they see, that's all they feel, and there's no way around that. However, I would say, if you're trying to figure out which one to choose, if you're going to let pain bury you or if you're going to let pain build you, I would choose to persevere. And the reason why I would choose to persevere is because there are scriptures and the promises of God that let us know that even though we're in the storm right now, there is victory ahead if we stay the course, trust the process, and trust that God is going to pull us through, right? So I was looking up verses on this and trying to figure out, like, how do I want to talk about this? And I came across a website. It was called soveryblessed.com, and it had verses on, like, perseverance and adversity, right? And in James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4, um, it says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." And the biggest thing that I took from there, obviously, perseverance will build you, right? But another thing that I saw in that verse was that word lack. So as we're growing through these experiences and we're facing pain and we're trying to figure out how do we overcome this, we also have to make sure that we don't lack. So going back to what we talked about last week about disrupting the or not disrupting the journey, right? Because when you disrupt the journey, you mess up the process, right? And you miss different keys and different things that you need, different pieces of knowledge that are going to help you be successful when you get to that end result. And so when we lack, what happens is that it can take us into some really dark places. And you know it, and I know it, that when we see these things, a lot of times it can lead to battles with depression. It could lead to suicidal thoughts. It can lead back to vices that you used to do to cope with the pain, right? But that's why it's so important. I think it's twofold. One, you have to remember that this too shall pass. But the other thing to remember is that as much as, when we deal with certain pieces of pain, we also don't know what the next person's going through. And sometimes we can overlook what that is, and we end up putting ourselves in a position that takes us away from the love and the strength that God wants to give us. And the reality is this, it's like it's so important to pray for other people, and it's so important to remember that everybody is fighting battles. Some battles you're going to see, and some battles are hitting so well within a person that you don't know what they're truly facing. I think that was the case when, when Twitch, when we saw what happened there, like we saw Instagram videos and he was dancing and he was with his family and he was having a good time, but there was something there. And it's unfortunate because you wonder, like, if he would have, I don't know what he did with his life. I don't know if he reached out. I don't know if he just kept it to himself. I just wonder and would hope that, at some point, like if a person feels so dark to the point where they feel like there's nothing left, I would hope that, a person would pray for me, or I'm able to pray for them, or something to that extent, to where I can realize that there's still promise left. And, it was unfortunate to see that, but it's just a reminder of kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, of just sitting in God's presence and being thankful for what we do have, because even when you don't feel like you have anything, sometimes sitting back and looking at where you are, you realize you have more than enough. Sometimes that's enough to keep going. And you have to persevere, because the perseverance is going to enhance your character. Um, as a basketball fan, if you don't know who John Wooden is, I don't know what to tell you, but John Wooden, legendary UCLA coach, multiple championships. I mean, but he's got his pyramid of success and all that, but he also had a lot of amazing quotes. And one of the quotes that I thought would really fit here, when he talks about character, it says, "Be more concerned with your character than your reputation, because your character is what you really are, while your reputation is merely what others think you are." A lot of us, when we go through pain, have to keep we're trying to keep this reputation up, and like, man, no, I'm cool, I'm fine, man, nothing bothers me, this, that, and the third. But our character is like struggling inside, because it's like, no, just like ask for help. It's prideful, because there's things that we know we need help with, and sometimes we don't want to ask for it. We don't want others to either A, not know that we struggle, or B, we're so protective of our pain that we don't want others to feel that way. So we will be quick to rush and try to help others, and then neglect our own. And that's something that I have to work on, because I can't count how many times I've done that. Um, but also, something that we need to work at is just a generation, because we can break those curses if we just reach out to each other. And that's something, like I said, I'm still working on. And I know that's probably something that most of us are working on, but it's something that, as we go through this perseverance and we deal with this adversity, remember, not letting it bury us, but build us up and build that character. And as we're as we're dealing with these things, what I find fascinating is like, when I think of these topics, I'm like, okay, what does the Bible say about this, or what does the Bible say about that? I feel like there's always something that's there. So as we're going through pain and we have these moments, we have to remember, like, it's not forever. We don't have to stay in that place forever, mainly because of who we serve and who God is. And when we suffer, or we have a setback, or we tried to reach a certain point and it didn't work and we just feel like giving up, we also have to remember that there's still more to the story. Just because that part happened doesn't mean that there's not more to come, but we have to be willing to go through it. And we also have to remember that there's hope. We have to have that. And Romans chapter 5, verses 3 through 5, I think spell it out even more, because it says, not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. God has given us his Holy Spirit. And as we persevere, we start to build all of these things. So just think about, like, even in the midst of the pain, God is still working within us to better us and to enhance us as we go through it. The best thing to remember is that even in the midst of pain, you are not alone. And you also have to remember, like, there's other people that suffer too. We're not in this by ourselves. We got a nation of people that are looking for help, but sometimes we don't know how to ask. Or we feel like we're so far down that we can't ask. Man, don't be afraid to ask questions. Or as my dad would say, don't be afraid to be great. Like, it's okay. Even even the people that you look at and you, I don't want to say idolize because you're not supposed to idolize anybody, but people you respect or people you look up to, you might have a celebrity that you're like, man, I watch them and they do well. Andy Mineo said it best in this song Clarity. All of my heroes are flawed just like me. These people that think that you think have it all together and that they're all put together, they're flawed too. And I'm sure they have their moments. Nipsey also said it best. The difference between me and others, I just didn't quit. I just didn't quit. You know, hardships came, troubles came, struggles came. I just didn't quit. I kept going. And one of the things that this website, So Very Blessed, talked about was, still persevering and going through this. And the question that came to me was, how does one find joy when there is pain? And can you praise while you're in pain? Now, the simple answer to that is you can find joy in all things, even in the midst of sadness, even in the midst of darkness, because in the darkness, there's still you can try to find that glimmer of light. And when you're in pain, you still have that hope that things can get better. It's something, like I said, I feel like this word is for me. It's something I definitely have to work on because it is hard. Like when you experience it, it's just hard to overcome it because we're so limited in our mind. That's the only thing we see. We can't see the next step, which truthfully I have to be grateful for. Because then if I see exactly where I'm going and it's like, oh, I'm gonna get through it, then I don't I don't really embrace the pain enough to where it builds me into who I'm supposed to be. So that way, as I go further in life and go further on my journey, being able to have those experiences are going to help me grow and become a better person. And that's what I want. I want to be enhanced. I want to grow. But this statement that So Very Blessed said I thought was great. So I wanted to share it. It says, sometimes we get so fixed on the end result that we forget about the reason for the process. When you face difficult things in life, you always have a choice. Sure, you have the option of giving up, or you can choose to grow. When you choose to keep going through the tough stuff, your character changes. You become stronger, more steadfast, more confident, and ultimately full of hope. Endurance doesn't just change the end result you are working toward, it changes who you are in the best kind of ways. It's telling you to keep going. It's telling you not to quit. It's telling you not to give up. It's telling you not to lose hope. Coach Jimmy V. Every year, if you turn on ESPN during the Cancer Week, the Jimmy V Week, they always bring up his SB speech. And he's standing up there with cancer and he's talking and he's telling you about his battle and he's telling you about his journey and he's telling you about like all the things that he's going through and stuff that makes him happy. And he was so full of joy. He knew all this stuff was happening to him and he still chose happiness. He chose joy. And he left us with 7 great words. Don't give up. Don't ever give up. And that's when you read these verses, you know, it's letting you know that you have the power to keep going. It's telling you right there. Endurance doesn't just change the end result you're working toward, it changes who you are in the best kind of ways. It takes you from the old self and puts you on the new self. It takes you from quitting to finding a new way to keep going forward. It's like if you're playing basketball and you go out and you lose the first game and you're like, well, that's it. And you got a 20 game season and you just decide like, man, we ain't doing no more. How do you expect to win? Like, how do you expect to overcome that? You have to keep showing up each day and you take it one step at a time, one breath at a time, one day at a time. Trust the process. Trust God's timing on this because he'll get you through. That's the biggest thing that you want to remember. And a lot of reasons why most of this stuff is painful and things like that. Some of us are in the process of where we're breaking a lot of generational curses. We're going away from what we used to do or what we saw, and we're now getting stronger with time. We're not going through divorces. We're staying with our partners. We're not, fighting fire with fire. We're listening to understand. We're going to school. We're starting new jobs. We're building generational wealth. We're not shunning people. We're actually listening and understand what's going on. Like, so there's so many different changes that are happening. And you got to remember, like, as you grow, you're gonna feel some pain. Like, that's just what it is. But you too can make it through. Romans 8:18 tells you the best thing. I think to remember where you are in life, this is a good verse to keep in mind. Romans 8:18 says this: For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. If you want to see God's glory, you got to keep going. But the ultimate thing you have to do is trust in him. That's it. And, for me, in a vulnerable moment, like sometimes I find that hard, especially like, if you make a mistake or you fall short, right? Like the other day while I was working, I caught an error and I don't know, through counseling, I'm glad I went to counseling and I'm gonna keep stressing that. Like if you haven't went and talked to somebody or if you got stuff, man, please go see somebody, talk to them. There's nothing wrong with you if you seek counseling. There isn't. There's nothing wrong with talking about it to get better. Remember, two things you be true. You can believe in God and you can go to counseling. That is a true thing. It can happen. There's Christian counselors, man. Like it's out there. So I would say like if you need that, seek it, reach out, man. Like I'll look for resources for you. I ain't got no problem doing that. I don't mind that at all. But like just know that those things happen. But through counseling, one of the things that my counselor was really good at was he was telling me like, a lot of stuff happened like when you were younger. So when certain things pop up, your mind will trigger back to those moments because that's when you experience most of the hurt or most of the pain or feeling like you were alone. And I'm just like, oh man, that's so true. So naturally, like when things went wrong, I'm like, I don't know who to turn to. I don't want to take accountability for this. I got to figure it out. But as you get older, you realize like, all right, let me own this so that way I can know what not to do the next time. Like that's a lesson I'm trying to teach my son is like, yeah, you made a mistake, man, but that doesn't define who you are. Like you messed up in that moment, but it doesn't mean that that's who you are as a person. Let's look at what happened. Let's learn from it. Okay, so what happened here? This didn't work. Okay, so let's build from that. And my son just like me, like make a mistake, we feel terrible. And we're just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. But at the same time, it's like, okay, I want to learn from this so that way I don't make that same mistake. I can be better. And if I see, for me, if I see my son getting ready to do that, I could go, hey, wait, let's talk about this. Do you remember how this worked? Like, we'll be all right. And once again, the verse is telling you, I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. We know we're going to achieve victory when we walk with God. We just have to trust the journey that God takes us on. That can be difficult, especially when we can't see it. But then I think to myself, well, if we're going through all this, right, and it's supposed to build us and help us like shape who we are. And I saw this on, I think it was the Just Different podcast. It was talking about if God were just to come down and I think that's what it is, but don't quote me. But it was like if God were just to come down and be like, here I am, then we would be forced to just be like, okay, we gotta worship. But we get this choice every single day. And what's nice is that there's certain things that we go through that look like they're leading us to disaster, but they actually lead us to a new beginning, a new outcome, or something so beautiful that it builds us into this human being that's like, wow, you went from there to there. That's why, like, this cancel culture thing, like we gotta be off that. Like, I know that's like the popular thing, but cancel culture is like canceling God's grace. I just feel like if I saw a person make a mistake and it's somewhere down the road, I see that this person has risen above that and is truly sorry for whatever it is that they experienced or what happened. And they said that they trust God and they've made it to a certain point. I have to believe that the only way they got to that point is that God truly got them there. Mm, So it's like even at even at your worst, God is still working for you to be your best. Even in your mistakes, God is still turning lessons into blessings. Even in the pain and suffering, God is finding a way to give you joy. Even in the midst of a storm, God is already preparing sunshine for you. Even when it seems like the road is about to end, God is creating a new path. I hope you understand what I'm saying when I break this down is that even in the moment that you're in right now, and you might feel like there's nothing left, you have nothing inside of you, you're empty, you've all cried out. There's no more tears. You've come numb to the pain. You feel hopeless or reckless and you feel like nothing else matters and you're so ready to give up. I'm telling you, at this point, this is where your breakthrough comes through because you've done it all. You've experienced it all. Now give it to God and back up. Because when you do that, oh it's it's awesome. There's no experience like it. I was ready to give up. And if I would have, I wouldn't be a father. I wouldn't be a husband. I wouldn't have been able to coach. The things I was thinking about this in the car the other day. Boy, this is a word. God is working. Listen, it's amazing to think that the stuff that I struggled with were the exact things that I had to use to enhance others to make them see their worth. I went from trying to figure out who I was to then helping kids realize that they can find their identity and they don't have to follow the crowds. They can truly just be themselves. And it's amazing because I'm like, every time I went through, I'm just like, how am I supposed to tell them this? And I was doing this and doing that. God's like, man, you went through it. I prepared you for it. Now you have this gift. I want you to give that. Man, it's so wild how God works. I'm just having a real breakthrough moment. I'm having a breakthrough moment right here. Like, it's just so crazy to think about that. Like, the things that you struggle with, the things that could bring you so much pain, could be the very thing that brings you strength and allows you to be a light and a blessing to somebody else. Oh God, I just thought about something else. Oh my goodness. So I remember like going like okay, so I remember I was in this class. I thought I was going to one path. I wasn't, but this person was going through like to become a mental health counselor. And the very things that they struggle with through high school and college is the very thing that this person has majored in to go help others. And I remember they asked, why am I doing this? Why am I going through this? And I said, because who better than you? You saw it, you went through it, you know you don't want it. And now, because of what you built and how you've overcome that, now you can be a blessing and overcome to others. Just simply put, grow through the pain because at the end of the day, if you do that, you're going to build yourself up to be something great and you're going to be a blessing to somebody else. My God, my God. Okay. I could go on and on, but I'm running out of time. So listen, be blessed, man. And just know that once again, Romans 8:18, for I consider that the suffering of this present time is not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. Once again, you know that you're going to achieve victory when you walk with God, but you have to trust the journey that God takes you on. And I'm gonna leave it at that, man. I don't know what else to say except God bless y'all and thank y'all. Thank you so much for just taking the time to listen. If you got something out of it, I really appreciate it. As always, remember, social media on Instagram, on TikTok. You can find me on YouTube at the Overthinking Thoughts Podcast. We're also streaming Apple, Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, YouTube, all that great stuff. And once again, remember, I believe in you. Now go believe in yourself, all right? It's the Overthinking Thoughts Pod. I'm Ed. We out.
These thoughts have been my head. Things I never did. I took some L's, but I'm still here. I got these thoughts up in my head. I toss and turn about some things I never said. I got regrets about some things I never did. I took some risks and took some L's, but I'm still here. And I know.